Hey, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, I'm Tim Ung, the host of this channel where I show you my process of designing and making products. Today we're going to be designing and making a big apple light out of red acrylic. The only material I'm going to be using for this project is an 1/8 inch deep red acrylic that's transparent. I'm also going to be using a glue from Bob Smith Industries, which I talk a little bit more about in some of my previous acrylic light videos. I highly recommend you check those ones out as well. For today's project, I started off by designing a big red heart in a software called Rhinoceros, which I'll talk about later in this video. When I was done designing the 3D model, I showed it to my fiancé, and the first thing she said was, "Tim, it looks more like a big apple to me." As she and I went back and forth on it, I took a look at the model again and realized that to me, it was still a cross in between being a heart and an apple. Being that I'm from New York City and that it's my hometown, I decided it wasn't so bad to call this video the Big Apple Light. I'd like to know what you think about it later in this video when you finally see what it looks like, so let me know in the comment section below. Do you think this looks more like an apple, or do you think it looks more like a heart? Now before we jump into the design and 3D model of this Big Apple Light project, please remember to support this channel by liking this video and subscribing for more like it. Now with that, let's jump into the design of this project. Here's a 3D model of the Big Apple Light that I developed in a software called Rhinoceros. You can see that there are two options here. The one that I'm highlighting on the right in yellow is the first option that I came up with. In this option here, you can see that all of the panels go perpendicular into two circular frames. The reason for the two circular frames is to add rigidity to the overall light. If I didn't have the top frame here, all of the pieces would fall off, or it would actually break the bottom frame. That's because 1/8 inch acrylic is brittle, especially at this scale with this much detail. The bottom area here is where the light source will be installed. There's going to be an extended socket light bulb installed down here where there's a clamp that clamps down and holds it in place, and then the light bulb gets screwed into the extended light socket. Once I came up with this 3D model here, I decided that I didn't want to install all of the panels perpendicular to the frames because you'd have direct views of the light source. From that, I decided to pursue a second option here, which I've done in previous acrylic light videos of mine. If you haven't seen those videos, I highly recommend you check those ones out after you're done watching this video here. Now let's talk about this second option. If I revolve to a top view, you can see how all of the panels are actually installed at an angle. There's such a big difference between how this one looks from the top view and how this one looks from the top view. It actually is the same exact panel design. The only difference is that there are less panels in this option as opposed to this option here. The first option here would have gotten too heavy because there's so many panels. In fact, if I highlight all of these here, there are 36 panels and it'll create a lot of weight that'll hold everything down. So instead of going with this heavier option, I really like the way that this second option came out. I also love the fact that when you look at it from the side view, you can actually see more of that heart shape that I originally started with. That's the reason why whenever I look at the second option here that I decided to go with, that I still see a heart instead of an apple. But when you look at it from the top view, it does kind of look like an apple. Now let's go into Adobe Illustrator, where I'll show you how all of the panels were designed as well as the circular frames. Here in Adobe Illustrator, I was able to fit all of the different pieces that I need for this project on two full-size sheets of red acrylic that'll fit inside of my Glowforge Laser Cutter. On the first sheet here, you'll see that I was able to fit a total of 5 panels. I'll need to cut this sheet 6 times, and then I'll need to cut this sheet down here 1 time, so that leads to a total of 7 full-size sheets of acrylic. You probably don't need a full-size sheet of acrylic for the frames here, but I just cut it on a full size because this one here wouldn't allow me to fit any of those frames. Once I'm done cutting all of the panels out of 6 different sheets of acrylic, I'll end up with 1 extra piece, and that'll be this piece here in the corner. And that's because I want to make sure if any of the pieces crack or if it doesn't cut all the way through, that I still have 1 piece that did cut correctly. It's always good to have a backup, especially when you're working with acrylic projects. Later in Glowforge's interface, I'm actually going to be adding a circular coaster here and putting a design there so that when I cut out these sheets, I can use up the sheet more efficiently, and then I'll donate some of those to some people in my local community. So that's my design and 3D model of the Big Apple Light. You can see how simple it is in its design because it's essentially 3 different types of pieces. It's 2 different circular frames with notches cut out along the perimeter, and 1 panel type that's cut multiple times over and over. You can also see in that 3D model why I couldn't decide if it looked more like a heart or a big apple. So remember to let me know what you think in the comment section below. Now with that, let's jump into laser cutting, assembling, and make sure you stick around to the end of this project where you get to see how this project came out. So that's how I design and make this Big Apple light out of red acrylic. At first, I really wanted this project to look more like a gigantic red heart, but I love the way that it came out looking like a big apple because it reminds me of my hometown in New York City. I love traveling there and seeing my family and friends and going to some of the older places that I used to hang out at as a kid. One of the things that I learned from this project is that whenever I use transparent acrylic, I get a lot of dust and flakes that just get attracted to the surfaces of the acrylic itself. In the future, I'd probably use frosted acrylic so that I can avoid that problem. Overall, this was a really fun project to work on, and it took me about 4 hours to laser cut, design, and to assemble this entire project. I actually struggled a little bit with this particular one because I haven't made an acrylic light fixture in a little while. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and remember to support this channel by liking this video and subscribing for more like it.